All right. Oh, more
So you
people.
got it.
I think I just dropped a message on WhatsApp as well / Discord community, so folks would be trickling in now. All right, awesome. Piyush, ready?
Ready? Yeah, we are ready.
Okay, perfect, awesome, cool guys. So, all right, thanks Piyush for the confirmation. So, welcome everyone. My name is Mayank Grover, founder of Outscal. Today I have Joseph and Avinash, who are the co-founders for LILA Games. Am I saying correctly, LILA or Lila? How do you say it?
LILA.
LILA, right? Okay, perfect. So, thanks guys for joining in. I had the pleasure of meeting Joseph in person a few weeks back in Bangalore. Avinash, I'm getting to interact for the first time here. Before we dive in for the topic for the day, would love to just get a little bit introduction from you guys as well. Understand both of you have had an illustrious career in the industry, right? Avinash, you were with June Gaming, founded that studio, while I know Robbie very well as well. So been in touch with them for a while, was your previous co-founder there. And, Joseph, for you, right? Like, I think you spanned across a lot in terms of different companies, Sega and whatnot as well. So would love just a little bit introduction in terms of how you got to co-founding and starting LILA Games, and then we'll dive into more sort of gaming industry broader topics as well. Joseph, you want to start?
Oh, you want me to start? Okay, so yeah, I've had a kind of longer career in gaming, starting in about 2010. Just started developing games on social platforms during the early days of Facebook and MySpace, and then from there, unsuccessfully tried to start a mobile gaming studio at that time. Right place, right time, didn't have the proper skill or expertise. And then from there, started working with a number of Asian publishers. So Ren Games, Smilegate, companies like that, helping them establish a Western mobile gaming practice. And then kind of like the big hit that I had actually was working with a company called FunPlus, where I led the overall development on a game called King of Babylon. And after that, I kind of shifted from the studio side into mobile game publishing, working at companies like Sega and then NBC Universal. And then I think that from there, working on the publishing side, one of the advantages that you have is that you get to work with so many different gaming studios globally. And so was able to see how a lot of different mobile gaming studios operated in Canada and Finland and Germany and LATAM, all over the place. And so, definitely had like an interest after working with a number of those companies, kind of like the desire to try and start something new and something potentially dramatically better. And also had a lot of deep thoughts as far as culture and how to develop something in a new way. I had met Avinash in terms of, when we have another co-founder, Paul, who's not here with us, but we wanted to kind of, develop a game together. We bumped into Avinash, things kind of worked out, and then we officially got started in October of 2021.
Yeah.
Or
2020.
2020.
Ready? Yeah.
Go ahead, Avinash.
All right. So, Mang, you have already said that a bit about me. I started my career by co-founding a game development company, June Gaming. So we started in 2008. So that was kind of early days of smartphone app development. So we built lots of apps. Then we also switched to education. So built lots of educational apps, then educational games. So my journey was, I was not into game development to start with. And personally, I have always been a programmer. So starting from coding in Objective-C, then initial, experimenting with Coco Studio. Actually, worked a lot with Coco Studio, and initial Unity versions in 2011, 2012. And at that time, we also did Y Combinator. So got to interact with some really cool entrepreneurs in Valley. After that, one of our investors was Backflip Studios. So they had a top crossing game called Dragon Rail. So that's where I got a little bit of gaming exposure. and we did one game with them, Ninja multiplayer. So that's where I first time coded a multiplayer game, and then we felt the power of multiplayer games. So also built a shooter game. You guys might know Maskal. Lots of learnings there. So personally, I always wanted to create ambitious games, and throughout my journey, I have seen Indian gaming industry is still growing. So I know it will take a lot to pull off something like PUBG or Call of Duty from India. And when I met Paul and Joseph, they have experience of building games with deep economy, deep design, and processes which are needed to build these kind of games. And I found that missing here, and at least in a very initial stage. In terms of experience itself, like there are no good big games built out of India. So I thought like this is a very good opportunity for us to do something out of India. And I was also aware of the effort it will take to do something like that, the train, build, so much risk. So yeah, that's where we are. It's a conscious effort, knowing all the challenges, but I mean, we are very, very positive that we are going to do something amazing here.
So when you mentioned, right, like doing something ambitious, right, like I'm an engineer. I started trying to build my first game back in 2009, right, as somewhere around the similar time that when you got started, right, like that time, if people like us who had started working with Unity back then, right, we remember how different it is versus now, right, people still complain Unity is not the best to work with. But then I remember the days where we used to do graphics programming, where we had to hard code pixel values, and there was no even drag and drop kind of an interface back in the day, right? So so things do come along a long way in terms of the technology and the infrastructure, but still miles to go before we catch up to the broader tech ecosystem in terms of the tools and the availabilities for building stuff, right? So awesome. So I think broadly, right, like I just want to take a couple of minutes to sort of understand how did you guys sort of get to the vision for LILA as well, right? Like apart from having a the hairy audacious goal, right? What was, when it comes to more strategically, right? How do you figure out what kind of games to build? Was it leveraging some kind of past experience or exposure, or randomly stumbled onto something and found that, oh shit, nobody's doing something in this space and there's a wide market opportunity available? So what was the initial sort of hypothesis and how did that sort of come about?
Yeah, well, in terms of like the specific game to work on, I think that was driven by a number of things. Like we tried to find a confluence of market forces as well as a specific type of game in which we can add a unique innovation or edge, as well as kind of like a type of game which we have a lot of interest for. And so I think from the market perspective, and as a startup, especially in kind of an entrenched market that we're in today, right? So when you look at the mobile gaming market, it's highly competitive. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to enter a space that was growing very quickly so that we could potentially take advantage of the high rate of growth. And if you look over like the last 2 to 3 years, shooters have been the one, if not the highest, one of the highest growing genres in mobile gaming. And I think that has to do with a confluence of factors, not only like this battle royale, which is what most people would attribute that to, but also the convergence of other factors, such as net code getting better, as device performance getting better, and things of that nature. And so what we've seen from that time, like 3 years ago, is like this massive explosion with, I believe close to 90% CAGR growth in downloads and installs since that time. And so, so from a market perspective, that was that was very attractive. And then Paul and I actually come from the 4X space. So we've launched a number of titles that were, #1 top grossing games. And we felt that there were a lot of specific characteristics from 4X that we could potentially apply to the shooter market. And so from that second aspect of being able to take or to bring a unique perspective to shooters, because we felt that if we were going to build another battle royale or team deathmatch, which is currently about 87% of the market today, that we would have no chance, right? Like what would we bring? You know, Tencent's Timmy Team, Quantum and Lightspeed, these are like 250, 350 people teams with massive technical advantage, massive experience in that category. So for us to try and go head to head with one of those guys, we felt was suicide, right? So there's that aspect. And then finally, like, and we felt we had a passion for it. And, you know, obviously like what Avinash brings is like his expertise working on shooters in terms of multiplayer for a long time. So like, we felt that with who we had and with where the market was going and with kind of the unique capabilities that we could bring to shooter, that we could potentially develop a game that we felt was very unique and compelling. And most importantly for us, one that would provide a deep emotional experience for players. There were a number of other games that we looked at. When we first started, we created something that we called the $1 billion board, which is basically kind of a whiteboard where we listed 5 different game ideas that we felt could do $1 billion or more in revenue. And so of those, we just felt that against those factors that I mentioned, that the shooter game idea that we had would probably be the most, the best for us to work on.
Yeah, I'll just add one thing, like as a company, we believe in doing one thing good. So that's why we do have opportunity of working on other projects. Co-development, like we get reached out to by studios, but we just want to focus on one game, because for us it's not just the game, it's what it takes to build a good game, you know, team, process, culture. So those are equally important and hard to do. So it's like all eggs in one basket, but it's not just the game, it's the entire thing which will make the game, which we are focused on.
And I think that's a really important point that Avinash raises, because we feel that that's one of the characteristics of the Indian gaming development scene, which I think requires a little bit more deep thinking, right? The app stores are a global marketplace.
Yep.
And if you're competing on a global basis and you're trying to make 10 different games and be like this deep across those different genres of games, I just don't think you have a chance. It's just, you know, it's the app stores are characterized by parallel distribution in terms of outcomes. And so really the strategy should be moving forward, and we would highly encourage other Indian game development studios to really consider, is spreading all of your bets out the right strategy, or really focusing in picking a specific genre, a specific type of game where you can become potentially the world's best in understanding and insights. We believe that is a superior strategy, and we highly recommend other Indian gaming studios to think about that much more carefully, because spreading your bets against the kind of marketplace that we're competing against in terms of the current marketplace in global competition, it's a losing strategy.
Yeah, I think it's a classic argument of going deep versus going broad, right? Horizontal versus vertical, and both kind of have their own advantages. In certain cases, going horizontal might give you an edge where you have maybe a small, you know, like I can imagine that argument panning out for a SaaS enterprise where you are selling, say, like $10 subscriptions, right? Now you have multiple products catering to the same demographic that you can sell into, where your customer segment remains the same, but you're selling them multiple subscriptions of $10 each for different kind of products, right? There could be all like productivity suite products, right? So there a broad horizontal approach works, but in our case for gaming industry, having that deep depth in terms of, especially if your goal is like hitting $1 billion in revenue, right? In that case, you do need depth, right? Like you don't imagine, say, hyper casual games ever getting to a stage, or at least a single hyper casual game getting to a stage where they're churning out $1 billion in revenue, right?
Yeah, you have to understand the macro operating environment that you're competing in, and understanding the situational context. There was a time when spreading your bets was probably a better strategy. That's not the best strategy today.
Yeah, and I think specifically for Indian gaming industry, the other thing is just learning. So if you don't understand how to actually build a good game, and you are building 10 games, then you are you are creating 10 chances of failure. So if you
Yeah.
are really good at building games and you are building 10 games, you have more chances of winning. So I do feel like there's lack of focus in terms of having deeper understanding, which we talked about, like in every department, engineering, design, product. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really required.
So I think you hinted out on this thing, right, a little bit earlier, right? Even Avinash mentioned this, right? Like that having that right skill set as part of the team itself becomes very important, and that's equally important for getting to a stage where you can generate $1 billion outcome from a revenue perspective as well, right? That means high focus on product quality, good sort of design, and sort of deep understanding of your customer's persona as well, right? What do they care about, right? How do they play? What do they engage in, and so on and so forth, right? So how are you thinking about sort of as you guys go forward, right, expanding the team in terms of what you can actually build, find the right talent locally? Where are you currently sort of challenges in terms of getting the right team on board, right? So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can start. I think that, so first of all, the Indian gaming development industry is still early. And so there are a lot of specific disciplines which aren't quite there in terms of sophistication and capability relative to other Western countries. Like if we were to go to Finland or even Turkey or China or somewhere else, there will be specific disciplines that are much more sophisticated than India today. So I think that there's a couple of ways of thinking about it. The first way of thinking about it is like, who can we get? And based upon what we have, how do we compete? But then there's also like this notion of, and that we strongly believe in, which is like the people that we bring in, we're going to have to, like, we may not be good enough today to deliver on the product that we're trying to launch, but then we have a plan to get them there. And so we specifically look for people who we believe have that high potential to learn very quickly and to become the best at what they specifically do. So there's actually, there's almost like a jigsaw puzzle, or there's a calculus around, what capabilities we have, kind of like a little bit like the capabilities that we need to deliver on the product, which is kind of outside of the reach of what we have, but we believe we can get to. And then designing around some of those capabilities that we don't think that we can achieve. So in the shooter market, there's probably 3 or 4, for example, technical problems that are, let's say, $10 to $12 million problems each. We're just not going to do those. you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think that's the way that I would think about it. And for any Indian gaming development studio, thinking about if you're going to compete, or for any startup generally, like you have to play to your strengths. Yeah. So having having an understanding of what you're strong at, and based upon your strengths and your capabilities, where do you think you can compete the most? I think that's the way to think about how to compete in today's mobile gaming market.
Yeah, I think
could you reference that, like maybe one problem that you mentioned, right? Like there are 3 or 4 problems that are $10 million problems, right? Like maybe just for the context of the audience as well, just mention like 1 or 2 of those. Like which one in your mind are those big problems that you said you're not going to pick on?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, for a shooter game, it would be things like hit accuracy, even the feel of the gun. I mean, you can spend $20 million just making guns feel really great, right? Yeah. But yeah, there's a number of issues that that are, the netcode, where netcode, you can spend $50 million on the netcode. So
yeah. So I think I'll just add to what Joseph said. If you're building something, first identifying the risks or key challenges of that product or game. If you're building a shooter, first of all, you should know what are the biggest risks. And then how do you solve it? Do you have talent for solving it? Can you outsource that challenge and then take up that project? So I have seen many studios just going blind, like, okay, we'll do it. There's this SS Store plugin, which looks good. And generally, one thing I have seen, most of the management of gaming companies, they are not gamers, or they might not be into tech, or to right people to understand the challenge. So
Yeah.
they have to be open to understand, to listen to whoever they trust, that okay, let's figure out the biggest challenges of this game and let's see if we can solve them. If not, then that answers your questions of like, okay, what sort of game should you build and what sort of talent would you need?
But you're saying that they're generally from a studio leadership perspective, right? Like you're open to thinking about, okay, there are some part of the problem which is probably straightforward and solvable, just needs enough time and resources. So we are happy to bring in a co-development studio, work with them, let them handle this problem, and probably
We're not going to bring
more.
in a co-development studio.
Okay. Okay. So like then it's basically like, okay, just get the right team in and we're going to solve all the problems ourselves, right?
Yeah.
But is there like a strategic decision for that? Like Joseph, you're like on point immediately, like fuck no this, right? Like we're not doing co-development, right? So was there like a past experience that has kind of influenced that thought process?
Oh, well, we want agency. We want control over our outcome. We're not going to rely on somebody else for our outcome. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And because like if they fuck up, then we're screwed. So for us, we want to control our destiny. We don't want someone else to control our destiny.
And as we said, like we are building a team which can make these kind of games. So, it makes sense to have that talent in-house.
Yeah. And for us, we believe we have a superior culture and superior ability to train and teach people. So why would we choose somebody else who's worse at that than us?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Because I think there's always that debate of build versus buy, right? What do you get to build internally, what you want to directly buy outside, right? So whether buying means like
so we're not going to build everything internally. Like there are some capabilities that we're going to rely on externally, but I would say from a core development perspective, all of that will be in-house.
Got it. Okay. And I think there's a question for Avinash specifically. What has been the difference between sort of developing games between June versus LILA? I'm guessing this is more from a technical sort of thought process, but yeah, please.
Okay, developing games for June gaming, LILA games. It always changes. Like even if we do another project inside LILA games, that will be different from the previous project. It totally depends on the complexity of the game. So what we are building at LILA right now is very, very ambitious. So it's just the challenges are very different. What we were building in June, first of all, gaming industry is also evolving. Tools are evolving, as we said, like Unity in 2 years, the Unity or Unreal, like you have better tools. So you have different challenges at different stages of technology. So as of now, technology has evolved. So the challenges of building games, expectations of players. So for me, it's just a much bigger and more technically complex game what we are doing right now. And then the other thing is it's just the focus on processes. So what Joseph brings expertise on is like, one is just the technical challenges of the game, but in terms of process, what does it need to build these kind of games? So even if, for example, if I have all the answers in terms of technical complexities, we'll still not be able to make this game. So there are so many other things which go in making a top crossing game. So it's like the combination of everything. So I would say right now it's the entire framework which we are trying to get right.
Got it. But in that case, right, like on the technical front alone, right, like are you, and Joseph and I jammed a little bit about this during the Bangalore meetup, but how are you guys seeing the challenge for hiring the right kind of talent? Well, like the question is slightly broader, not just technical, but maybe Avinash can talk more technical specific talent, and Joseph, you can talk more about sort of, design, non-engineering focused talent that you guys are looking at, right? Like, are you thinking that, okay, yes, we are finding good talent, but they're at the 50-60% mark, and we have to fill in the remaining 40% deficit through our sort of internal culture / kind of upskilling that we want to provide internally for the team members that are joining us, right? So how are you thinking about evaluating for the right fit as part of the process, and where are the deficits that you're sort of seeing, and how you're thinking about filling in those deficits?
I can talk from technical point of view.
Yeah.
So first of all, it's very hard to find right talent for the game we are building. And recently we looked at the ratio of hiring is 0.6%. So it's not even 1 out of 100 people which we interviewed and hired. So it's pretty challenging, and I think it's also learning for us. So initially you always start with top, like, okay, these are the technical challenges and this is the talent I want. But then, once you don't get those people, so you cannot be hung up on that. Like, hey, I'll not hire till I find that ideal match. So then we have basically broken it down to the fundamental level. Like, okay, if your fundamentals are strong, like if you can understand maths, physics, like basic, I'm not talking about like you have to understand like scientific physics. So if you can do that, then we can train you to solve complex problems. So as of now, our hiring philosophy is your fundamentals have to be strong. If you say that I'm a gameplay programmer, your vector math, your algebra, all these things should be good. Like people just say I could move a rigid body here to there, and I'm like I'm a gameplay programmer. No, like do you understand like vector math and all these things? So specifically, I look for those skills. And in terms of training, as you said, so one way I believe of solving complex problems is you have to do a very good job at breaking it down. So if we say, hey, make a gun feel good, so the engineer will be lost. Like, what do I do? Where do I start? Like you break it down to, okay, like implement recoil, implement hit feedback. Like break it down to very very specific levels, and then have lots of iterations feedback. So I mean, I just deviated to other direction, but yeah, in terms of hiring, it's challenging in one sentence.
Got it.
In terms of other disciplines, I definitely agree with Avinash that what we fundamentally look for are people who have solid foundational skills and who think from a fundamental perspective. I think it's important to note that not only is India early in terms of like a game development ecosystem, but it's also oriented around a specific type of game development, which is really around live ops one to N, right? Which is more around content cadence and things of that nature. So the 0 to 1 aspect of game development, creating a new game, that discipline is even earlier than some of the other areas that we're talking about. And so we don't find a lot of people with the specific expertise that we're looking for. And then to even make it even more complicated, a lot of the games that Indian game development studios work on are very casual in nature. And so for deeper systems, like games that have gotcha fusion, games that have these other systems that require deep modeling, understanding of a lot of issues and complexities that are associated with mid-core or hardcore games, we literally can't find a single person in all of India that has experience against these kinds of systems or with that kind of experience. So for us, what we have generally been doing is looking for smart people, looking for people who are passionate about their work and who we believe can learn very, very fast. So for us, that's not a 9 to 5 sort of casual worker. It's somebody who's going to be a little bit more hardcore. But in return for that, we believe we can create like some of the world's best. I firmly believe that the people who work at LILA will easily be able to, after this experience, work at companies like Riot in LA, Zynga in San Francisco, not here in Bangalore, or anywhere in the world at top companies because of all of the experience and the learnings that they get working with us here today.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and especially on the emphasis of working with studios in LA versus San Francisco versus Bangalore, right? Because I spent time in Bay Area working with studios like Dana and all, and I know the level of sort of depth in terms of technical expertise that goes into usually building multiplayer games and large scale games and how they scale from backend, etc. as well, right? So totally understand and respect that sentiment as well. But like, are you systematically thinking about some kind of a framework for upskilling talent that you're bringing in internally as well? Because like you said, right, like they're not 100% there yet, right, in terms of what you need them to be at, right? And culture alone is not gonna fill in that deficit, right? So across technical / non-technical, right? How are you thinking about creating sort of internal modules, internal systems for, like I've seen companies implement like buddy system. So if a junior engineer comes in, they have a senior engineer that they're shadowing for a month or so. It's like, have you built some of these sort of internals along the way?
Yeah, I mean, you could pair for learning and things like that, but what we have is something that we call a skills development matrix. And essentially what that means is that for any specific discipline, what we're building out is a set of expectations in terms of skills and capabilities for, just taking product management as an example. What should an associate product manager be good at across different kinds of skills or capabilities, and what the expectations are for different levels? And then based upon our assessment in each of those areas, then specific initiatives to help people develop those skills over time. But I will say that there are, talking about product management in particular, we have people who have never been product managers on a game before, or product managers at all, who are now product managers. And, I am 100% sure they can easily today now work at a gaming company and probably be one of the best there.
Got it. I think Avinash, you were also adding something to that.
Oh yeah. So in terms of engineering, so we are a fast-moving company, and we also have a deadline to ship this game. So when we hire somebody who is still not there, so first of all, we make sure that we hire someone who can learn. And so we have to do a very good job at managing them. So the way we assign tasks, the way we onboard them, the process starts from there. So it's like, learning while doing. That's the sort of training I generally prefer. And I'll onboard them on features very specifically. Okay, you are good at UI, do UI, but you will also touch code base, which has multiplayer part of it. So that, you start developing it. And I think the second thing is our expectations are very high, which we make clear from the start. Like, hey, our expectation from you is like here, like you have to put extra effort to learn. No spoon feeding culture. I'll tell you what to do, but our expectation is like, okay, if you tell us that, hey, you couldn't finish this feature, but you spend that time learning these concepts, which will help you to move faster with this, that's equally important. So yeah, so I think it's just lots of hard work is needed, and lots of management. So that's why I feel management is very, very hard. People take like, you are a manager and now you can relax, but you have to pay very close attention to what these people are doing, because their success is in your hand. So yeah, it's just a properly curated course, in your task list, in your sprint. That's how we do it.
Got it. So I think both of you guys knew the challenges jumping into this, especially from the Indian development ecosystem, right? Like not the millions of DAUs that we are seeing in India, but the dev ecosystem is definitely early stages still, right, in India. So was there an intentional choice to base the studio and the core team out of India specifically? Or have you thought about that as we expand, this would turn into a remote sort of a venture where we have a hybrid setup, some members in India, some outside? How are you thinking about sort of the future roadmap for the team to expand and grow?
Well, a couple of things. I think one, India was fairly specific and strategic from the perspective that we never ever want to compete on a level playing field. It's like Jeff Bezos' Amazon concept. And so we look for structural advantage where we can. So we believe that a team in India can become a world-class team. And that's kind of the big bet that we're making. I was involved, I mentioned that I had worked at FunPlus before. At that time, FunPlus was not the #1 publisher in 4X. King of Avalon was the first game in 4X that the company was working on. We did not work with a world-class team at that time, but we had what I now refer to as a leads-based model. We had a team that continued to learn and improve, and we brought world-class experts to help train that team to become, today, arguably one of the world's best teams in 4X, launching games that have made billions of dollars in revenue. So I think for us, we are betting on the Indian development ecosystem being able to become world-class over time. We're trying to drive that. And I would say in terms of other teams, we don't believe in remote work. I mean, sorry, you know.
So I 100% agree with your first answer. Like I made that bet that we can make it like how you said, right? Like the team, like there can be a world-class game team coming out of India. I without scale, my bet was like we can make a world-class ecosystem out of India, right? So we're on that same sort of thought process, except that I feel like remote work can work, whereas your thought process is absolutely
Right. So like let's say we launched our game product and we're in live ops. I think you could probably live operate a game remote.
yeah.
I don't think you can make a super complicated new game remote. I think that it might be possible with enough time, but we're going to run out of money. And I kind of don't like going out of business. So, it kind of sucks. So I think for us, we're in person, in office together because of the challenge and the complexity of the product that we're working on. And, we have limited time and budget. So that's why we're in person in office. But we will, I think fundamentally, one of our objectives as a company, our mission is to create world-class masters at their craft. And we try to build a company that helps people achieve their potential. So from that perspective, that's not India specific. So if we are successful with this game, our hope is to start another studio somewhere. Maybe it could be another studio in another part of India. Maybe it could be, I don't know, in the Ukraine and LATAM, in Montreal. I mean, I don't know. But that would for me, that would be success in terms of like a next evolution in terms of our company would be to start a studio somewhere else. But for right here, right now, we're all in on India and we will live or die here.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned maybe Nigeria. Like we've had a lot of folks in our Outscal community who are taking part in the programs and whatnot as well, and are coming from different parts of Africa as well. So I'm seeing sort of upcoming talent coming from African
Turkey's great.
well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of well, not a lot, but there's a few areas in the world that are certainly more attractive than others.
We have a developer from Nigeria, by the way. So
as part of the team.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome! And they're working from Bangalore or they're working remotely?
As of now, from there.
Yeah.
Remotely.
Okay, but planning to get them to your office as well, just because Joseph has laid down the law for it, huh? Awesome. So there was one question from LinkedIn, and how is the YC experience for gaming? Because gaming has been generally taking a strong sort of center stage since COVID, right? There's a lot of buzz with Web3 and whatnot as well. Keeping that sort of temporarily aside, like what's your take? Has YC overall been helpful? And Joseph, if you had any experience in there, please feel free to chime in as well.
I don't know anything about YC. So
okay.
Yeah, and I did YC in 2012. It was 2012 winter batch to be very specific. And so that time we were doing education. So basically, as long as you are clear on what you are looking for from any incubator program, and just try to get most out of it. So our YC experience that time was very good, not only because of being in YC, because of the YC community itself. So the kind of entrepreneurs you will meet there, like there are some billion-dollar companies out of our batch. I think Zen Payroll, now they have changed their name, Amplitude. There are other companies also came out of the same batch. So it's just, sometimes, you go to a good college, not because of teachers, just because of other peers. So YC can be also treated that way. And the other thing is just the funding. So YC provides a very strong platform for you to get funded. So, and almost like, if you are good, if what you are building is good, you will get funded. So that way, I think it is very helpful. And depends, and now YC also has bigger network, so they will be able to connect even game developers to other gaming companies. So I'm sure this could be very helpful for game development companies as well.
I mean, the sentiment broadly in the early stage startup space has been mixed, just because YC's batches are now 100 plus.
Oh
It's no
yeah,
longer, right? You know,
yeah,
you
we
guys were
were,
probably
I think,
there when there were 10 or 12 people, 15 companies in the batch or something like that, I'm guessing.
60,
Yeah,
60.
exactly. Right now it's like 100 plus, and they're scaling it to 500 plus per cohort, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
there is always that
Yeah, I'm not
debate of,
sure.
you know, how much still the quality is there or not, right? Are you really getting attention from partners how you used to 10 years back, right? But then now you get 500,000 versus, you know, 100,000 7-8 years back, right? So like things definitely have changed, but sentiment is still kind of mixed.
But I would still say, like, you know, if you're very sure about what you're looking for, and if you can get that out of any program, not only in YC, then it's also your purpose.
But would you guys recommend doing an incubator like YC today if you are a gaming startup? Because I know companies that reach out to me as well, and they've been trying to get into YC for the last 2-3 years with the same studio, same company setup, etc. And it feels like they're not really making progress in the business. They're just trying to break into YC as the first in some sense, right? So, like, I'm guessing other founders are reaching out to you guys as well. So, what's your general take? What's your general advice for young gaming startups that are looking to start today?
I mean, I would say, like, you should not spend too much time anywhere apart from building what you're trying to build. And then there are, like, to build something, you need resources. So you need money. So YC is not the only place where you can get funds. So definitely, if you don't have money to build, you know, your studio, your game, then start talking to, you know, and now India is getting so much attention from VCs. So don't have to go to an incubator program. You can just, you know, come to Bangalore, talk to all the investors. But be sure that, you know, these things are distracting, and maybe, you know, structure it in a way that, you know, one of your co-founders is just focused on fundraising, but you don't lose focus on what you are building. That's very, very important.
I mean, funding today, right now, is better than it's ever been. So if you're not able to get funded in this environment, then I think you should just take a step back and try to understand why. You know, so it might be the team, it might be your experience, but there's probably a reason why you're not able to get funded. And also, just don't give up. Like, I think if you're determined enough, and if you try to figure out what you're missing and trying to address those gaps, I mean, again, now is probably a better time than ever to get funding and try to start a gaming company. So,
but would you say
and there's
that
lots of advice on
sorry.
you know, pitching and all these things. So, you know,
Mhm.
talk to other founders who have raised money, try to, you know, smooth out or just improve your pitch. There are lots of things you can do in that way.
But specifically for a gaming studio, right? Like indie development has always been a very attractive / creative path for gaming professionals who wanted to break out on their own, right? Or have a 2-3 people small team and create sort of, you know, different creative projects. And usually the mantra is that I want to build games that I want to play, right? That's usually the motto for a lot of these indie developers, right? So
but
like
none of those indie projects are able to get VC funding, right? Because if there's, it has to make commercial sense. If people have a small team and they're like, oh, I want to make this really, you know, I've got this crazy idea and this really niche game, and we're not going to charge any money, and, you know, then, you know, I mean, yeah, you're not going to get funding for that from a typical venture capitalist. But, you know, then just find people who want to fund that kind of a vision that, you know, probably aren't venture capitalists, but are friends and family, or, you know, do a Kickstarter. But I mean, funding options, even if it's not for venture capital, but it's an interesting concept based upon like crowdfunding platforms and things like that, that too is better than any time ever. So there's really no excuse.
But normally we've seen like a lot of like the likes of your Sequoia and Matrix and all usually can come in at a seed stage, put in a couple of $1 million in a tech startup, even at a just at a deck and a team, right? Without any sort of proof of concept, without any sort of prototype even built out, right? Like, have you seen that kind of conviction from investors in the gaming space come in yet? Or are they looking for more validation, having prior track record?
Yeah, so I do think if you only have a PowerPoint and you have no track record, like, you know, so we raised off a PowerPoint, but we've also, you know,
20 years plus of
multi-billion-dollar games before. So, you know, but I would say it depends on who you are. If you don't have a track record, then build something, show something, right? But I don't, if the expectation is, I've never done anything before, but I have a cool idea, trust me. I mean, come on, that's not realistic.
Yeah.
Like, then prove something, do something, work for a game company. But the mentality of just believe me and I'm a dreamer and just fund me is quite frankly stupid, right? So like, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, awesome. I think your voice is breaking up a little bit. Maybe I'm not sure if it's just me. Just guys, just let me know. Maybe it
Might be our internet. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
yeah.
Still a new office. We are setting it up.
Okay, perfect, awesome. So I think this was great conversation, guys. Like, thanks again for joining in. And any place where audience can check out what kind of game that you're building, any timeline that you want to share as to when to expect maybe like a beta version or a sneak peek, or what, anything that you want to share about the game and the project.
well, I mean, I think we're going to have more information on dates sometime later this year, but it's a big game. We're trying to make a lot, and it's super ambitious. But in terms of more updates, I would say just go to our website, www.lilagames.com. Check out our jobs. And we also weekly, there's a newsletter. If you go to gamemakers.substack.com, then we also have our weekly jobs are updated every week there if anyone's interested in seeing what openings that we have.
Perfect. I've just shared your website URL in the chat here, but then I'll get these both the Game Maker newsletter as well as the website with the jobs link also posted on YouTube as well with the video as well. Perfect. Awesome.
Thank you so much. And we are also planning to do like a couple of events in coming months, like game jams or gathering, and some educational content as well. So yeah, we'll keep sharing those as well.
Absolutely happy to figure out how Outscale's community can take part in that as well. If you want to host like any kind of game jams, happy to co-host these / figure out how to bring in, because our developer community has like now touching about 7,000 on Discord alone. So happy to chip in and get the word out there, and feel free to reach out in any of those cases as well.
Cool. Yeah, we actually are planning on an educational series. Like, as I mentioned before, we are invested in India. We are invested in the Indian gaming ecosystem. So we do have a notion of having a Saturday school where we teach different topics, whether it's product management, engineering related topics, even art. So a lot of stuff is coming up. And I don't want to pre-announce our partnership with a potential big company, but we're potentially going to announce something bigger coming up. But yeah, if any of you out there are also interested not only in learning but teaching something that you're really good at, please contact us as well.
Perfect. Awesome. I'm happy to see this announcement come out soon as well, because Outscale is all at the intersection of tech and gaming as well, right? That's personally been our passion area. So happy to see more studios like yourself take these kind of initiatives to sort of uplift the entire ecosystem as a whole as well, rather than just sort of focused on the core team alone, right? That's always important, but then the ecosystem also needs that same love and attention, right? Somebody's asking, how can we get access to those learning sessions? Like, is this something that you guys are streaming live?
I'll post it in the Game Makers newsletter when we're going to start teaching the courses. So
perfect. Awesome. And feel free to just let me know as well, and I'll get the message pushed out to the entire community.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm going to hold you to this. We'll partner on this.
Anytime. Anything that's related to edtech and gaming, you can reach out like 2 a.m. I'll be there. Perfect. Awesome. All right. Thanks, Joseph, and thanks, Avinash. And
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. All right. Take care, guys. Bye.